It is 6:01. I'd like to call the Board of Aldermen work session to order for October 1st, 2025. You please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening. Let's see, items for discussion and consideration. So we've got about 4 items on the agenda today. The first one's going to be presented by City Administrator Kathy Pratt, and it is related to the salary study presentation by Evergreen Solutions, and it should be a PowerPoint.
It is a PowerPoint, and it's Mark Holcomb here this evening, correct?
Hello, yep, it's Mark Holcomb here. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Yes.
Perfect. Is there any intro, or do you want me to just jump in with the PowerPoint slides? I've got them all queued up on my side if I can share screens, but I wasn't sure, Kathy, if you wanted to add anything first.
I'll just give a brief intro and just mostly a reminder that the board authorized an agreement with Evergreen Solutions to develop a compensation plan for the city. We did not have a salary plan to use in the compensation of our staff, and so the board approved that. You guys have gone out and done a benchmark study, and you're back to present the results.
Okay, perfect. And I think that is a great summary, and so I'll go ahead and jump in. If you all have any questions, feel free to stop me, but I'll also be happy to stick around after I present if you have any questions afterwards. So for tonight, the overview I want to do is talk a little bit about the study goals, and the project phase. I think both of those are a little bit of recap, sort of a little bit of what Kathy just shared, but a little bit of maybe a little more detail of exactly what were we looking to do with a study like this, and what were the steps that we took to come to our recommendations. We'll jump in and talk about the market results then, so sort of share some of those high-level findings of, hey, what did we see when we compared you versus the market? Obviously, your structure, as was mentioned, you don't have the same market structure as they do, but we were able to make some comparison points to show where do your salaries sit versus theirs. And then lastly, talk about those recommendations that we have and sort of bring those forward for your consideration. So with a study like this, a compensation study, so yes, the idea is look at compensation and get a system in place and provide recommendations. But there's really 2 things that we want to make sure we're doing throughout any recommendations that we make. Number 1 is to ensure that we maintain internal equity with any system that we create in any compensation system. And when we say internal equity, what we mean by that is, how do your positions relate to one another? How do they compare? If we're going to make sure that the positions with more leadership essentially are compensated to reflect that. The positions with more complexity, the positions where if they have a little bit more decision-making autonomy, if they make a decision, there's a little bit more consequence of error, things of that nature. And then likewise, if there's positions that are doing the exact same thing, so maybe one's not higher, one's not lower, we'd want to look at the compensation and just make sure in the system that they have equity between those roles there. With the second bullet, instead of looking internally at your positions, we want to look externally and really do some of the same things, is make sure that as your positions compare to the market, we want to try to find those roles in the market that are working at the same level, that have the same responsibilities, the same tasks, the same job duties, and then make sure that your pay is equitable as compared to that external market. So all the recommendations that we made are a factor of both of those 2 items. So it's not that we just look at the market and whatever the average of the market says, we say, hey, we got to pay that. But it's also not completely internal. We do combine the 2 for all of those recommendations. In order to do a study like this, we really divide it up into 4 phases. So phase 1 is the outreach phase. And that's really about, meeting with your, city leadership, collecting data, getting to know you and sort of understanding what's in place at the current time. So even if you don't have a formal pay structure in place at the beginning of a study, we want to understand what positions do you have, what do the job descriptions look like, how much are people paid, so we can sort of get a feel for what are you doing currently. The internal analysis in phase 2 is involved and really is sort of entails, reviewing the items that are shared with us, reading those job descriptions, sort of identifying, are there any questions that we see based on the work that we've done in the area? We may have some preconceived notions, and we sort of read those job descriptions and say, hey, maybe they do things a little bit differently here. And so that phase 2 is really important to make sure that we're going to give you the study that reflects your organization directly. And so that is built off of the data collection in phase 1, that internal analysis in phase 2, and that allows us to go out to the market and make accurate comparisons in phase 3. And so for phase 3, we reached out to the market and collected data from, I believe, 13 different peers. And so that allowed us to make a good sort of statement on how do you fit within that 13 peer market, where actually would we want to place you to be competitive with those peers. So that market positioning is key, because every organization can sort of identify their own. Some say, hey, we're just lucky if we're sort of at the bottom of the market. Some really, really want to be that number 1, number 2. And then others say, hey, we want to be very market competitive, and we want to, just be competing with everybody, but we don't have to be number 1. We don't want to be number 13. And how do we fit in the middle there? Phase 4 is the solution recommendations, and really it includes the reporting aspect as well. So we're sort of at the tail end of phase 4 here, as we've given some recommendations. We've talked about some different options, and I'll present a couple of those to y'all tonight. And then the reporting, again, would include both a written document as well as this PowerPoint that basically communicate those results out and sort of address any questions that you might have. So with the market survey then, so the first thing I'll talk about is, who did we look at? So when I say the word market, what exactly do I mean? Well, when I say market, here's how you compare to the market. We're talking about the 13 peers over there on the right-hand side. So you'll see organizations, again, from across the state, but really looking at comparable organizations that have positions similar to yours. Obviously, some of these might be a little bit larger than you, and some might be a little bit more comparable. But the key factor that we want to make sure that we're emphasizing here is, when we look at positions across any of these organizations, we're trying to make sure we're only looking at positions that are performing the same work and the same duties. So if you look at, St. Charles County, they may be large, they may have a larger budget, they may have, more positions, but we're not going to just compare titles and say, well, it's titled that here and titled that here. We'll match them. We're looking at the job descriptions to say, look, do they actually have the same responsibilities? They have the same duties. And again, that goes for each of the other peers as well. Just pick on that county, just since it's a little bit different structurally. We did adjust for cost of living as well, to make sure that all the cost of living is actually put in terms of your spending power in your local area. So it's done at the county level, but we did adjust for cost of living. And then lastly, we did include all of your classifications in the market survey. We had an average response rate of about 7.1 matches per position, and that's a strong response, but it sort of ties into what I said. We are not looking to force 13 matches for every single position just to make sure we have something. If another organization doesn't have a position that matches closely with the duties, we don't match it. And so that allows us to make sure we're only looking at apples to apples comparisons. So with the results, then, what do we actually find out when we looked at that? There's 2 figures up at the top. One of those is range placement. So what that means is, in the market, again, a number of your peers, most of them are going to have sort of a very well-defined minimum pay for their classifications and maximum pay for their classifications. And so that means if somebody comes in a new hire, they've got no experience, they're going to come in close to that minimum. And if they've been there their whole career, they've moved up, they're high performers, they'll be at the maximum. So your salaries right now are about 41% of the way through their ranges. That's sort of what we call range penetration. So you'll see there it says range penetration into the market. So 41% means that you are paying less than the average. So you're about 41% through. 50 would be the middle. And obviously, 75 would be 3/4 of the way through, et cetera. So at 41, it doesn't mean that you're, far behind. It just means you're a little below sort of that midpoint of that average that peers would pay. On the right-hand side, you can see we actually looked at the salaries that employees take home at these other organizations. We looked at your base salaries as well. And in that comparison, you'll see you're about 6.3% behind the average pay of the other organizations. So again, a little bit of a market gap. I would say really anything between about 0 and 5%. We would sort of say, yeah, you're starting to trail, but maybe not that big of a deal. There's always going to be a little bit of float or variation. 6% sort of where we start to say, yeah, there's a gap there that we'd like to address. We certainly think there are some recommendations to see, but I do want to emphasize it's not, we've seen some organizations 10 to 15, 20% behind. So you've done a good job, but I think getting an actual structure in place that'll allow you to more accurately benchmark and compare with the market over time will certainly help you to tighten this up and make sure you don't find yourself trailing like this again in the future. The other thing we did take a look at is the supplemental benefits. So again, we've highlighted here the mayor and the alderman positions as well. So with the annual salary, I believe the mayor was pretty competitive. The average of the peers was about $11,000. The aldermen were a little more than five, almost 5,500. So y'all were a little bit behind there. And then you can see the loggers, life insurance, then medical, dental, and internet stipend as well. Those were more rare. Most of the organizations did not offer those, but there were some organizations that offered each. And so you'll see that sort of count over there on the right, highlighting those positions. So with all of the data then that we collected, what were the recommendations? Well, number one was to adopt a step-based pay plan. So this is that actual structure that we're talking about that would actually let you, sort of make a comparison to peer organizations. So that step plan that we're proposing would be 10 steps across, that pay plan. And that would basically give you a progression where somebody can come in at the minimum, they can jump up, move up steps, and sort of advance over the course of their career. So that structure, again, hopefully some of y'all are familiar with that, what those would look like at other organizations, but it would be new for you here. And we feel it would help to bring some consistency to your system. Number two is now that we're recommending a pay scale and a pay plan there, we would recommend you put pay grades to each of the employees and in each of the classifications rather. So what that means is we're going to look and we're going to say, based on your organization and how you have things aligned, which positions would need to go in which grade. So you might have a grade 1, 2, 3. And so maybe some of your entry level positions would go in those lower grades. As you go up into grade, and I think we use the hundreds convention, so 101's the beginning, but again, when you go up to 105, 110, 115, again, you'll start to see some of those leadership positions or some of those roles that are going to have a little bit more complexity, some decision-making autonomy. So those positions were all individually slotted based on the market response and the internal comparisons that we made to try to make sure you again, on that original slide I talked about, are maximizing your internal and external equity both. Lastly, then the recommendation is, so once you figure out where are your employees, what's the step plan going to look like, what grades are the positions going to go into, the third one is to find out where are your employees going to go on that plan. And there are a few different options that you all can move forward with. We've highlighted two of those recommendations for you here. The top one is called the bring to minimum approach, otherwise known as sort of a bring to closest step. And so what that means is we just look at the salary that your employees are making and we say, is this within the pay range? Is this is this essentially in the pay range there? And if the answer is yes, that it's within the pay range, we don't adjust it anymore. We just put on a step and leave that be. But if the position is below the pay range, so maybe the pay range starts at $50,000, they're making $45,000, we would bump them up all the way to that first step, to step one there, just to make sure everybody fits within the pay ranges. So that's called the bring to minimum approach. It would cost you about $22,000, about 2% of your payroll costs right now, and again, an average adjustment of about $1,500. So that would put you in a market equitable pay system with pay grades assigned to all classifications, and it would put everybody on a step. The second option that we have is a little bit more costly, but it's also a little bit more targeted. And so the tenure parity option places employees according to their tenure of service at the city. So it doesn't just say, hey, are you in the pay range? Yes, no, and sort of make an adjustment based on that. It actually looks at how long have you been at the organization, and then it makes sort of what I'll call maybe not a judgment call because it's all based on data, but we sort of said, hey, how many years have you been here, and what step would that correspond to? And so if you've been here for 3 years, you could look to go to step 3. Even if you're, between step 1 and 2 right now, you could get an additional bump to go up to step 3. If you've been here 7 years, you could look to be on step 7, even if your pay is below the minimum. So it is a little bit more targeted there. It does give some larger adjustments, but it also allows you to spend your money, what I'll call a little bit more, in a more targeted way, as I've kind of used that word, because what it also says is, look, If you're an employee and you're already making, enough to be between maybe steps 3 and 4, and you just started last year, you should be on step 1. We don't need to move you. We don't need to give you an additional adjustment because we've actually found that you're in a market competitive spot, and you're appropriately placed based on what you're making right now. So that's why you see only 9 employees are adjusted there, because it does target those adjustments only to those employees who are actually below the tenure number. If somebody is above the tenure number, it would just freeze them in place. Nobody would be penalized. Nobody would lose any money, but they would essentially just stay put until that scale catches up to them, and they can go onto a scale and get adjustments in the future with merits and step raises and et cetera. But again, they would be frozen at the current point in time. So that would actually cost you about 4% of your payroll. It's about $5,000 per person, again, with that adjustment. But those are the 2 options that I wanted to highlight tonight. And that's really the content I wanted to share, is talk a little bit about that structure, show you the costs there, and talk about the market result. So any questions from anybody, or Kathy, anything else that you'd want to add?
Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Okay, absolutely. If y'all need anything, please feel free to reach out. We are always happy to assist. And if you think of any questions later, sometimes it does happen, feel free to send an email. We'll send you a response ASAP, okay?
Great. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Mark.
So just some follow-ups on my part to the study. First of all, this is my my third experience going through a market-based compensation study. And I feel that this was a fair and consistent process. The mayor did have an opportunity to review the benchmark cities with us, and finalize that list. And then Evergreen Solutions moved forward with completing the study. One thing that jumps out in particular would first be the aldermen's compensation. The last time the aldermen's compensation was reviewed or changed was in April of 2013. And I think that it's fallen behind in keeping up with the market. And I also think that since 2013, we have become more digital in our operations, not just in the world, but also with you all. And you're using your personal cells and your home computers to conduct city business. So I also think that a stipend would be a recommendation for that. You notice that, one other community has an internet stipend, but I think in many cases they actually get reimbursed. It's not an actual stipend. Whereas with a stipend, it's just a set amount to compensate you for that rather than for your actual expenses. And I do see us, just a warning, going forward in the future, to becoming more electronic in our processes here. Maybe at some point having laptops at the dais that you use, even to vote on matters. So and then I think that would be appropriate for that reason. And I think that the mayor has some thoughts as well related to this, if you wanted to share those now.
Yeah, I think it's covered well. From 2013 to 2025, to not have any sort of adjustment, and then seeing that we were already below parity for the alderman, I think it's really important. And additionally, Kathy mentioned the digital the digital world we live in, and I think a stipend is more transparent as well. It's out there, it's there. Like Kathy said, there's multiple ways to do it. Some cities just have it as a reimbursement through the city, but I think a stipend is just clear. It's everybody gets the exact same amount of money. It's transparent, and that's the way I think is the appropriate measure for that. So my intention is to put this forward into an ordinance, and I'll give my little piece, and I'll let our city attorney give additional context if I miss anything. But essentially, I'm gonna it's 90 something dollars. It's about $100 is what, is recommended as a per month that would get us up to par to be in parity with the other pay for other aldermen. That plus the stipend. I'm going to put it in an ordinance and bring forward. And then from there, I'll let John explain the legal details of how it would move forward. John, please.
Certainly. Any increase in the compensation to the alderman does require an ordinance. And I would note that the Missouri Constitution prohibits aldermen from increasing their salary while in office. So any ordinance that passed would not be effective until the election for your seat. So half of you will, if it was passed today and became effective immediately, the ordinance, half of you would receive the increase in compensation in 2026 after that election, the other half after the 2027 election.
Thank you, John. And I think, this is really important too, because this aligns with kind of a broader goal, which is to assess, there's a couple of things we're looking at tonight with, furniture, ensuring our staff is paid correctly and ensuring the aldermen are paid correctly. And I think that this is something that I take very seriously the responsibility in my position to ensure that everybody here that serves the community in the city is compensated accordingly, and their work is appreciated, and they're also given a comfortable and safe working environment. So those are things that we're working on right now. Kathy and I are, and this was one of the things that had come up before the election, but it certainly aligns with what I'd like to see moving forward with making sure the staff and everybody here has the appropriate adjustments to their salary, and I think that'll ultimately create a stronger workforce and we have a small staff, and we ask a lot of them. We ask a lot from our staff. We don't have, you look around at Lake St. Louis, they got 19,000 people, and they've got a staff of about 90. We're looking at just a shade over 12, maybe 14 now, maybe. So we're a busy staff, and everybody here is double and triple hatted. So I think this is really important that we set the salary standards to reflect that and ensure that the workforce that we have is, feels appreciated, as well as going to attract a better workforce in the future as well, if we make sure that we're at the medium line or slightly above, and that's where I think we should be with the smaller staff. So I just want to thank the board for approving this study for Evergreen. I think Evergreen did a good job with it from my perspective. And I really appreciate the board's support and helping Kathy and I, make kind of course correct a couple of these things. And I welcome the board's input as well for any the salary stuff that we just discussed with the aldermen's, bringing the aldermen to parity, as well as the stipend. So
I have a question. I know we talk about the mayor and the aldermen, so then this is going to trickle down to all the employees too, where we look at what they're being paid. And
So the Evergreen Solutions has developed a 10-step plan, which I don't know if he mentioned, was consistent with our benchmark cities. One had 15 steps, but the other communities all had 10. So essentially it provides a 10-year path for any employee at the city. My recommendation is that we use the tenure parity option, which means that employees are compensated or slotted in that, in the compensation plan based on their years of experience in that position at the city. So if, one of our parks workers has been here 4 years, then he's slotted at year 4. Generally is how that works. You're compensating them for their time here. And then I think that, again, that this will bring our employees into a competitive market pay scale. It also gives them information about what they can anticipate going forward. And then we would review this. It would become part of an administrative policy to review this every 3 to 5 years. So have Evergreen come on board again and update our plan, or another organization and update the plan, and that so you have like a 3 to 5 year plan going forward for employees and their expectation to meet their expectations. I think John Young would share with you that compensation is under the direction of the city administrator. And so the goal of this was to share with you the study, and then, I'll move forward with implementing it. The mayor and I have also taken a look at that. But the next step for you all would be to, as the mayor mentioned, authorize or he's going to place an authorizing ordinance regarding the alderman pay increase.
That makes sense? Alderman, okay. Yeah, I think that, well, kind of to Kathy's point, and we're not focused, like, that's something that Kathy and I have had a lot of discussions about, but it's kind of falls under the office of the city administrator to adjust those things. So what we're talking about here is really the alderman and the mayor, but ultimately it does trickle down to your point, and it is being addressed. So yeah. Okay, any further questions related to the salary presentation by Evergreen and activities associated? Alderman Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, Kathy, so you'll have this all prepared and all that when we discuss the budget coming up for?
Yes, we'll use the new salary plan for budgeted salaries.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're gonna have that all. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? None heard. Okay. Next item up for discussion is an RBA from Alderman Waters related to Barrett Haven sidewalk and curb repairs. Alderman Waters, you have the floor.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Have traversed the area of Fairhaven Boulevard to observe the shortcomings of its construction, include street surface, curbs, sidewalks, and given that I wasn't part of this prior to just earlier this year, wasn't aware that there had been efforts put forth over there, as I've come to learn, but I do believe, even though we do have some set aside money, that is a set aside amount that'll do a few things, but the extent of the damage along that entire roadway is, I was amazed at how poorly either maintained or how much damage has occurred. And I don't know over what time necessarily that damage has occurred. But there was a gentleman that fell in that area a few weeks ago. I don't know whether he was a person from Barrett Haven per se, but I did understand from one of the homeowners that there was a fall. We may hear about it, we may not, but it's not a surprise given the condition of the sidewalk. From either gaps, slants, in other words, the angle of the sidewalk, which falls away from the street, in the separation between the curbs and the sidewalks being, in some cases 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. That's enough to someone inadvertently stepping into a space and could seriously, injure themselves. So I'm just wanting to bring to the attention of the board the fact that let's put it this way, a more current comprehensive evaluation, I think, needs to be done of that roadway and its related sidewalks, curbs, and green space. And I know we have some streetlights over there that have been a part of our previous discussions as to, and as well as the maintenance and watering of some of those green space areas as well. So again, I don't know exactly how we would go about approaching that. We could take the money we have as a set aside and hire an outside firm to go in and do a comprehensive plan, possibly. But all I know is we need to bring some attention to that area sooner than later. And you all know a lot more based on the history of what's been going on there. Why the amount that was set aside was determined to be just that amount. But that is insufficient to address the issues that exist over there. So just like to have further discussion about that.
Jeff, have you seen this area? Is it how, I mean, do you have pictures of it or does somebody have pictures of it? I just want to see. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Is that just is that just a what do they call it? Just a Band-Aid, or does it needs to be done somewhere else? Yeah.
It's still going to creep. You're going to stop it.
Mm.
It's just a result of the way the streets are poured, and all streets are poured that way without expansion.
Mm.
They just have contraction. That's a, even I would look that way. That's why you hear about the blame blowing up because of lack of expansion. But there's no way for that machine to pour that street within expansion. They saw cut it and you get a contraction to it. They fill that in.
Mm.
But when the water evaporates out of the factory, it shrinks up and it would crack. So it cracks in the soil.
Okay.
Those aren't expansion. 50 years ago, you didn't have street creek. They poured one slab at a time. That's not done anywhere. And
If I could just share, our city engineer, Matt Davidson, is actually
Okay.
Here, and I would ask him to comment related to Barrett Haven. I will say, which he'll probably mention as well, if you recall, I think maybe 2 meetings ago, we talked about the pavement condition report that the county is doing that should be completed somewhere, I think, after the first quarter. Which will give us an assessment of all of our city streets and the conditions of those. And then I'll just let Matt comment.
Yeah, on top of that, that report should be to us, expected to be completed by the first of the year, according to the county. And then on top of that, the city went ahead and we are going to contract with Transmap as well to get a right-of-way asset inventory, so sidewalks, streetlights, stop signs, all that too. So we'll have that assessment information as well moving forward.
We also were under the understanding, we meaning staff, under the understanding that we had open contract with M&H. And we had been assembling our list from the concern system for those items to be addressed this fall. Apparently, M&H went out and did some work that they're now invoicing us for. And so we need to, clearly, there wasn't anything done on Barrett Haven Boulevard. But we're going to have to go out for proposals for repairs to meet those concerns.
Thanks, Kathy. Just to kind of pile on to all that, about a month, maybe a little over a month ago, myself, Kathy, and Matt went through and rode through the trail system as well as assessed the road there. So we are tracking it, and we actually all hopped on my gator, if you believe us, all 4 of us fit on it. We rode through the area, and because the complaints were certainly loud and clear, and being someone that lives in the area as we all do, I'm sure it's not too hard to see. I've ran through that trail before and seen it years ago. So this is when we started kind of down this pathway. In order to get it eligible for grant money, this is something we chatted about before. We had to run through, and this is more for the edification of the rest of the board who may not be tracking it. It's been a longstanding issue, and it's been deprioritized, and it's something that I know that we're certainly tracking, and appreciate Alderman Water continue to bring it forward. But about 2 years ago, the board voted to conduct a study on it and have our city engineer I do a traffic survey, and with that traffic survey, that's going to determine the category of the road. And the way that the category of the road works within our city and other cities in the county is if it has over a certain volume of traffic on it, it's eligible. It's renamed to what's called a collector road. So Barrett Haven Boulevard exceeded the threshold to become a collector road, and then there was a process to get it named a collector road, and the county road board has to approve that. And then once it's named a collector road, it's then eligible for state funding. And because of the size of Barrett Haven and the damage, and it needs a pretty much an overhaul. So that was approved last year, and the expectation was in the previous mayor's office that was put forward, but we found out recently that it was not. But it was not put forward for any grants. So in the last 6 months, I've asked the city engineer to ensure that this gets priority as well. And I know that Matt has understood that, as city administrator. And I'll continue to follow up, Alderman Waters. I appreciate you, like I said, continuing to bring it forward. I'm not sure why it's continued to be neglected, but I think there's enough eyes on it and enough folks that are moving the ball down the field now. We should make some good progress. And again, we're going to expend some of our own funding to patch it up as it's needed. But yeah, it is pretty. It needs some work. So thank you for bringing that up. Any additional comments on it, Alderman Johnson?
I'd like, as fellow Alderman, the mayor, we have been hearing about this road. I mean, and I was on before the mayor, and it's been a continuous ongoing thing from the residents over there. The thing I would like to see, and the thing that I need to relate back to the residents, is a timeline of the process of what's going to happen. Now I hear a timeline, hopefully first of the year, we're going to get a report from the county. And then what's the next step after that? So that when I talk to my constituents, I'm able to say, look, I'm always explaining everything takes time, and I think the people in the audience knows that. But it's a lot simpler if I can tell them, come the first year, we're going to get a county report. After that, we're going to do this. After that, we're going to do this. And then, down the line, instead of, and I know Keith is taking this message back to those residents, we're working on it, and residents get tired of hearing we're working on it. So that's what I would like to see put forth, some kind of timeline, so we can actually relate to the residents what's going on and what's transparent. Once again, we're still going to take the blunt because everything takes time, but at least we can give them something. And then if we don't fulfill, shame on us, So that's where I'd like to see. Thank you.
And that's fair. I understand that. Like I said, we honestly and truly learned yesterday by a call that M&H considered themselves complete on the work and was not going to, Matt had a meeting scheduled with them next week, and that they were not going to attend that meeting to do any further work for the city of Dardenne Prairie. So that leaves us in the position of having to go out for bid. I believe that Joe Morris, our new public works supervisor, is working on some specifications. And that would be the first step to go out for curbs and sidewalks, not just for Barrett Haven, but also for the outstanding concern list that we have. We have concerns that are dated with other areas across the city that need attention. So we would want to include all of those. In terms of a major overlay project for Barrett Haven Boulevard, that would be part of a grant process, and Matt can share with you what those dates are related to applying and then when we would be notified of funding.
Right. So County Road Board and East-West Gateway applications are due in February or March of 2026. They'll make their decisions if we receive funding by the fall of 2026. If we do receive funding, construction will be slated for 2029 at the earliest.
And with that being said, with our budgeting coming up, which will have road funds, will you be out there assessing any of the major things that needs to be done out there? Because there are going to be some work done, need to be done before we ever get a grant to fix
Yes.
the entire road.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
I just have a comment, because Ryan and I were talking, and I feel better after I heard Kathy saying the concern list, because, you know, Ward 1 and Ward 2 probably have situations. And I know it sounds like the roads are going to be surveyed and covered, but it would be the sidewalks and the curbs that would be of interest that need help in Ward 1 and 2.
Right. And that is what we will be going out for bids for, is sidewalks and curb replacements. We can do pothole filling. I know that the guys were out there doing that on Barrett Haven in the last couple of weeks, but those are temporary remedies. What we're talking about in the grant process and grant funding is a a complete overlay project. So, a 20-year maintenance project, not a Band-Aid project. And unfortunately, that is the timeline related to those projects. It takes a while to get the funding, go through the design process, and then the construction process. So.
Okay, any further comments? All right, next up is the Barrett Haven Park lease amendment. City Administrator has presented this. Kathy, can you please enlighten us on what this is and what we need to worry about?
Absolutely. So Great Rivers Greenway approached the city about a month ago related to a lease amendment they were requesting with regards to work that O'Fallon is doing, would like to do, and also regarding an easement issue related to one of our residents who owns property within the lease area. So Great Rivers Greenway purchased property, just for background, in Darden Prairie for the development of the Darden Greenway and Barrett Haven Park. And we entered into an operating agreement and lease back in 2007. That allowed the city to operate the property as a park, and we have been doing that since 2007. It's always been part of the Darden Greenway master plan for GRG to extend the Greenway both west and east of Barrett Haven Park. The city of O'Fallon and GRG have worked on plans to extend this segment over the years, and that plan is ready for construction. You may have already seen some road work that's related and some trailhead work taking place. So O'Fallon has been in design for a new trailhead along Technology Drive on the west end of the park to make a connection north of Darden Creek to connect to trails in an apartment complex. There's a large apartment complex right there, and eventually beyond that. This project is in partnership with MoDOT to replace the vehicle bridge over the creek at the same time as constructing the multi-use trail bridge connected to the planned trailhead. Furthermore, the city of O'Fallon and GRG have been working on extending the greenway on the eastern portion of the property. This connection would include a bridge over the creek, extend into O'Fallon Sports Park, and eventually connect with the existing greenway in Cottleville. In order for these two projects to move forward, GRG and the city of Darden need to amend our existing lease for Barrett Haven Park to authorize the construction and use of this property by the city of O'Fallon. And I mentioned there was a private property owner involved. In addition to authorizing the construction and use of this property by the city of O'Fallon, the proposed lease amendment also includes a provision to authorize a fence ingress and egress easement for the property at 201 Toussaint Landing Drive. The property owner has mistakenly constructed a fence on the GRG-owned property that Darden Prairie leases and maintains. GRG advised that the best course of action to remedy the fence situation is to authorize an ingress and egress easement for maintenance of the fence, but that also would require an amendment to the existing Barrett Haven lease with the city of Darden Prairie. The current lease amendment being submitted for approval by the Board of Aldermen would authorize the amendment of the lease to allow for the ingress and egress easement as well as the two greenway projects with the city of O'Fallon. On your agenda this evening is item 1 under new business. That is the amendment to the lease. Our city attorney has reviewed it and made changes. And just again, to summarize, it authorizes O'Fallon and DRG and their contractors to enter and use designated areas for trailhead bridges and connecting trail segments. It coordinates with MoDOT to align trail bridge construction with a vehicle bridge replacement. And it approves a fence maintenance egress easement at 201 Toussaint Landing to correct the legacy fence location. Otherwise, the lease remains unchanged. And I'll also add this ordinance is not legislative and therefore GRG respectably requests 2 readings. As you may have noted, the project is underway. It has started.
I'd like to also bring up that this is no additional cost to the city.
That is correct.
We're not
There's no
spending
costs.
any money or doing anything with it. Just for clarification.
I do have a question now. John, in this area, if something happens to this bridge in Darting Prairie, that everybody's making other than Darting Prairie, are we in control or not control? Do we have to fix the bridge if there's something happens? Is that in this contract, or is it through a filing? Like, who fixes the bridge if it's in our area and something's wrong with it?
Are you referring to the roadway
Yeah,
bridge?
the roadway bridge, yeah. Did I say that wrong? I'm sorry. Is there any? I just want to make sure that we're not, Darting Prairie's not paying for anything if something happens.
We're not taking on any additional responsibilities than we already have.
Okay.
Our lease is, and John can correct me, I know he's perusing it very quickly, but
Yeah.
our lease is related to the park land itself,
Okay.
and not the bridge.
Okay. Just want to
Roadway.
make sure. That's all.
And the
Okay.
bridge is a MoDOT bridge. It's a MoDOT road.
I just
So
wanted to
it's
make
not
sure.
O'Fallon's road, it's MoDOT's. So it's
Okay.
not either city.
Okay.
So
I just want a clarification for myself. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the Barrett Haven lease amendment? None heard? Okay. So that will not be administrative, so that will require 2 readings, right?
It's not legislative, so
Okay,
it,
it could go twice. Okay,
could-
so it is,
correct.
okay. So that could be read twice this evening. All right. Just for the board's edification and clarification, your comment on that. Okay. And then the last thing we have for discussion consideration is the agenda for the regular meeting tonight. Nothing heard? Okay, we'll move to staff communications. City Attorney.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Deep in thought. City Engineer.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to give a little update on the Bates Road traffic counts from last week or last meeting. I had the county go out and place traffic counters on both ends of Bates Road on the south end of Bates Road near Red Hawk Parkway, and on the north end near the South Outer Road 364. They had the traffic counters out for 9 total days and got back some traffic counts. It looks like based off the traffic counts used in the grant application, which were obtained from MoDOT in 2024, the data indicates that traffic volumes have remained generally flat. At Bates Road, at South Outer Road 364, the counts we've obtained from the county were slightly higher, about 12 to 18% higher. While at Bates Road at Red Hawk Parkway, the counts were slightly lower, 4 to 23% lower per direction. Taken together, you average those counts northbound, southbound on the South Outer Road 364 and at Red Hawk Parkway. You take those counts together, the differences balance out and are within the normal range of variation between a 1-week traffic study and MoDOT's annualized counts. Overall, traffic counts on Bates Road have remained constant year to year, and we do not see evidence of a significant increase. So I know there's some discrepancies of the traffic counts were higher at the north end versus the south end, but 10 to 20% swings are pretty normal without applying day of week and seasonal factors and such.
Thanks for the update, Matt.
Thank you.
Anything additional?
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. City Administrator.
Thank you. First, I'd like to just recognize the staff and elected officials who came out for Prairie Day. This event is an all hands on deck event. It runs from 10 in the morning till 10 at night. And we had a wonderful assortment of activities going on, great attendance. It was a beautiful day. I just want to thank staff in particular for all the work they put in, both leading up to it that day and afterwards, because after everyone goes home, there's still trash to pick up. And the Boy Scouts are a big part of that. They come out on Sunday morning and help Nicole pick up all those little scraps of paper off of our ball field. So I think that also deserves some special recognition. It was a great event. It was my first one, and I look forward to next year's. I had a front row seat for fireworks. I sat right under the bleachers, and it was pretty spectacular. So I also wanted to take a minute just to welcome some new businesses to Darden Prairie. We've issued business licenses recently for Cross Country Mortgage, Title Resources off of Bryan Road, Sunny Perch Soaps, which is actually a home-based business, and then Beck Aesthetics and Wellness, which is a medical spa. So, and that is it for me.
Okay, Alderman.
Yes, speaking of trash, it triggered a question in my mind, and I asked you about this a little while ago, Kathy, about our trash service with Grace. I believe we have a 1-year renewal option with them. I was curious if we can see about going out with a competitive bid as we're at the conference. All these other trash services come up talking they can be competitive. They can offer a dump twice a year for large items, 50% for seniors. There's a lot of different options out there. So I really believe we ought to look at going out for a bid for our trash service.
I do concur with that. After speaking with people at the MML conference, there are some different options out there. So I do agree with you.
If I could get direction from the board that you want us to seek competitive proposals this year for hauling services, I'd be happy to do that.
I'd like to make a motion that we seek professional bids from hauling services.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye,
Any opposed? None heard. The ayes have
thank
it.
you.
Okay, anything else from the Alderman? Okay. I think I'll save mine for later as well. I think we're running short on time. We got about 5 minutes before the next meeting starts, but so I will save my commentary to the end, the next meeting, and go from there. So I request a motion to adjourn. Moved by Alderman Goodmeyer, second by Alderman Detweiler. All in favor? Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Oh, man. It's been barking at me.